Okay, 15.4 is ethics and impacts of biotechnology. So years ago, there were science fiction movies about the future world in which genetics determines people's ability to get ahead in life. So in the movie, schooling, job prospects, and legal rights are rigidly determined by analysis of the individual's DNA on the day that he or she were born. Are we moving closer to this kind of a society? What privacy issues does biotechnology raise? What if the government wants to use an individual's DNA for another purpose in a criminal investigation or paternity suit? What if health insurance providers manage their healthcare policies based on a genetic predisposition to disease? Well, private biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies do much of the research involving genetically modified plants and animals, and their goal is largely to develop profitable new crops, drugs, tests, or other products. So, like most inventors, they protect their discoveries and innovations with patents, a legal tool that gives an individual or a company the exclusive right to profit from its innovation for a number of years. So molecules and DNA sequences can be patented. In fact, roughly 1/5 of the known genomes in the human genome are now patented commercially. Laboratory techniques like PCR have also been patented. So when a scientist wants to run a PCR test, he or she must pay a fee for the license to use the process. And the ability to patent is meant to spur the discovery and advancement in medicine and industry. But sometimes patent holders demand high fees that block other scientists from exploring certain lines of research. And in the case of the development of provitamin A, the enriched golden rice that we talked about before, the patent disputes kept the rice out of the hands of farmers for years. So when it comes to your own DNA, how much privacy are you entitled to? Do you have exclusive rights to your DNA? And should you, like patent holders, be able to keep your genetic information confidential? Well, the Tomb of the Unknowns in Arlington National Cemetery near Washington, D.C., holds the remains of unknown American soldiers who fought our nation's wars. In order to avoid more unknown soldiers, the U.S. military now requires all personnel to give a DNA sample when they begin their service. Those DNA samples are kept on file and used, if needed, to identify the remains of individuals who perish in the line of duty. What if the government wants to use an individual's DNA sample for a criminal investigation or a paternity suit? What if health insurance providers manage their healthcare policies based on genetic predisposition to a disease? And suppose that years after giving a DNA sample, an individual is barred from employment or rejected for health insurance because of a genetic defect detected in a sample. Would this be fair and reasonable use of genetic information? Well, in 2008, the United States Congress passed the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, which protects Americans against discrimination based on their genetic information. So, are genetically modified foods safe? Well, careful studies of such foods have provided no scientific support for concerns about their safety, and it does seem that foods made from genetically modified plants are safe to eat. Farmers choose genetically modified crops because they produce higher yields, reducing the amount of land and energy that must be devoted to agriculture and lowering the cost of food for everyone. Insect-resistant genetically modified plants need little, if any, insecticide to grow successfully, reducing the chance that chemical residues will enter into the food supply and lessening the damage to the environment. So careful studies of genetically modified foods have proven no scientific support for concerns about their safety, and it does seem that foods made from genetically modified plants are safe to eat. Critics point out that no long-term studies have been made of the hazards that these foods might present. Some worry that the insect-resistant engineered into the genetically modified plants may threaten beneficial insects, killing them as well as crop pests. Others express concerns that the use of plants resistant to chemical herbicides may lead to overuse of those weed-killing compounds. And another concern is that the patents held on the genetically modified seeds by the companies that produce them may prove costly enough to force small farmers out of business, especially in the developing world. So in the United States, current federal regulations treat genetically modified foods and non-genetically modified foods equally. Genetically modified foods are not required to undergo special safety testing before entering the market. No additional labeling is required to identify a product as genetically modified unless its ingredients are significantly different from its conventional counterpart. The possibility that meat from genetically modified animals may soon enter the food supply has heightened concern about labeling. As a result, some states have begun to consider legislation to require the labeling of genetically modified foods, therefore providing consumers with an informed choice. So should genetic modifications to humans and other organisms be closely regulated? Just because we have the technology to modify an organism's characteristics, are we justified in doing so? Biotechnology has given us the ability to know ourselves more and more, and with this knowledge, however, comes more responsibility. You've seen how the GFP gene can easily be extracted from a jellyfish and spliced onto genes coding for important cellular proteins. This ability has led to significant new discoveries about how cells function. The same GFP technology was used to create fluorescent zebrafish. These fish, along with fluorescent mice, tadpoles, rabbits, and even cats, all have contributed to our understanding of cells and proteins. Roll my book up here a minute. Okay, the ethics of new biology, but the ability to alter life forms for any purpose, scientific or non-scientific, raises important questions. Just because we have the technology to modify an organism's characteristics, are we justified in doing so? If human cells can be manipulated to cure disease, should biologists try to engineer taller people or change eye color, hair texture, sex, blood groups, or appearance? What will happen to the human species when we can gain the opportunity to design our bodies or those of our children? What will be the consequences if biologists develop the ability to clone human beings by making identical copies of their cells? These are questions in which society must come to grips. The goal of biology is to gain a better understanding of the nature of life. As our knowledge increases, however, so does our ability to manipulate the genetics of living things, including ourselves. So, in a democratic nation, all citizens are responsible for ensuring that the tools of science that have been given to us are used wisely. And we should all be prepared to help develop a thoughtful and ethical consensus of what should and should not be done with the human genome.